Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You are watching your evening operational briefing for March 29, 2026. Russia launched 443 drones at Ukraine overnight. A new record, second mass strike in a row, no missiles. The target is logistics, locomotives, depots, fuel routes through Odessa and Kryvyi Rih. We will break down why this campaign may matter more than any single ground battle this spring. On the front line, the battle for the northern bank of the Oskil is effectively over. Lyman is being strangled, supply corridors are down to a handful, and Russian forces are closing them one by one. In the Middle East, Yemen is now officially in the war. Two strategic straits blocked simultaneously. Aluminium plants, gas facilities, and a pharmaceutical factory hit across the Gulf. American Marines are in the Arabian Sea. Markets open Monday morning with all of this to price in. Let us get into it. March 29, 2026 confirms the consistent trend of the past 2 weeks. Both sides of the conflict are methodically intensifying operations across the full spectrum, from strike campaigns to ground operations, ahead of the full deployment of the spring military campaign. The number of drones deployed, the geography of targets, and the tempo of ground advance on key directions are all moving in the same direction. The conflict is entering its most intense phase since the beginning of the year. Russian strike 443 drones, a new daily record. In the night of March 29th, the Russian side deployed 443 drones for a strike against Ukrainian territory. This is the second consecutive day of mass drone application, substantially exceeding monthly averages, and an absolute daily volume record for the entire conflict. For context, from January through the first half of March 2026, the average daily drone deployment was approximately 100 units. From mid-March, it rose to 200. Yesterday, 273. Today, 443. The dynamic is clear and indicates a deliberate build-up of strike capacity as part of the spring campaign. The structure of the strike is critically important. No missiles were used, exclusively drones. This is a tactically deliberate decision. A mass strike without a missile component saturates the Ukrainian air defense system by volume of targets, draws down interceptor stockpiles, and simultaneously preserves the missile inventory for subsequent precision strikes against priority targets. The strike was executed in several successive waves. The first group departed from the Bryansk area, following the Belarusian border toward Kyiv, using drone control infrastructure deployed near the Belarusian border. Dozens of drones surrounded the capital from multiple directions before disappearing from monitoring radars, either intercepted, used as decoys, or having struck their targets. Immediately after this, a second and significantly larger group was launched from Belgorod and Kursk oblasts. Transiting through Kharkiv, Sumy, and Poltava oblasts, this swarm reached the central part of Ukraine before splitting, part moving toward Odessa and Kryvyi Rih, part toward Mykolaiv. Strike results. Logistics as the priority. The character and direction of the strikes unambiguously indicate that the primary objective of the Russian strike campaign in its current phase is the logistics of the Ukrainian armed forces, specifically the supply chains delivering fuel and weapons to the front line. In Odessa, explosions from dozens of drones were recorded, one of the most powerful strikes against the city in recent memory. This is not coincidental. Odessa is the key transit hub for fuel and equipment deliveries to Ukraine, including via the Romanian route through the Black Sea port. Just days ago, Zelensky completed a Middle Eastern tour during which he reportedly secured uninterrupted diesel fuel supply agreements for up to 1 year. The optimal route for these deliveries runs precisely through southwestern Odessa Oblast. The Russian side evidently understands this. In Mykolaiv, explosions were also recorded, presumably strikes against transport infrastructure along the same logistics corridor. In Kryvyi Rih, fresh footage documents the consequences of previous strikes. Another diesel locomotive destroyed. The significance of this cannot be overstated. Diesel locomotives are an irreplaceable resource for the Ukrainian rail network. European track gauge is incompatible with the Ukrainian standard. New compatible locomotives are essentially no longer being manufactured, and the total fleet has already been critically reduced over the course of the conflict. Each destroyed locomotive directly degrades the ability of the Ukrainian armed forces to move equipment, weapons, and fuel toward the front line. A new tactical element deserves separate attention. Footage published today shows a Russian drone dropping mines over Ukrainian territory before striking its target, up to 8 mines from a single drone. Extrapolated across the daily volume of deployed drones, this implies the potential mining of several thousand points along logistics routes in the course of a single overnight attack. This is a qualitatively new element of complex action against rear infrastructure. The cumulative effect of the strike campaign has already manifested today in confirmed train delays and disruptions across Ukraine. Ukrainian retaliatory strike, Leningrad Oblast. The Finland incident. The Ukrainian side conducted a retaliatory strike against Russian territory during the same night, deploying approximately 150 drones. The Russian Ministry of Defense confirmed the interception of 203 units. Active Russian air defense operations were recorded in Kursk and Bryansk oblasts. From the Bryansk area, reports arrived of sounds resembling cruise missile flight, but as of the morning of March 29th, no cruise missile use has been confirmed. Leningrad Oblast again features as the priority target. Smoke from a fire that began during previous strikes continues to hang over the Ust-Luga area. Fresh footage documents the ongoing fire and reports of renewed strikes against export infrastructure facilities. A separate episode warrants attention. Part of the Ukrainian drone strike reportedly crossed into Finnish territory. A NATO member state, the incident received extensive coverage in Finnish and European media. This episode adds a new dimension to the discussion of acceptable limits in the course of mutual strike campaigns on this theatre. The satellite factor, Bureau 1440, and Ukraine's response. Over the past several days, Zelensky has repeatedly raised a topic that constitutes a separate strategic thread of the conflict: the development of Russia's low-orbit satellite constellation under the Bureau 1440 project. As of March 24th, 16 satellites of this system are operational in low orbit. According to available data, they are already providing high-speed internet access in test mode for priority units, primarily operators of strike drones and missile systems. The new Strela 1M light rocket, based on the Topol ICBM platform and capable of delivering payloads of up to 500 kilos to altitudes of up to 500 kilometers, is being used for satellite launches. According to available data, Russia plans to place over 300 satellites into orbit by the end of 2026. Ukrainian leadership has received this development with evident alarm. Zelensky has directly stated that Russian satellites are conducting reconnaissance imaging of Middle Eastern targets, Diego Garcia, Kuwait International Airport, Prince Sultan Air Base, and that, in his assessment, they may be used to guide Iranian strike assets against coalition facilities. The logic of these statements is aimed at convincing Western partners of the threat the Russian satellite constellation poses not only to Ukraine, but to NATO as a whole. If the 300 satellite deployment plan is realized, Russian units on the line of contact will gain stable high-speed internet comparable to what Starlink provides to the Ukrainian side. This could substantially level the information and intelligence advantage Ukraine has held for much of the conflict. Ukrainian threats to destroy Russian satellites remain declaratory. The technical capability to do so does not currently exist on the Ukrainian line of contact. Kupiansk direction, the final episode of the Oskil battle. On the Kupiansk direction, a number of fundamentally important data points arrived today, allowing the conclusion that one of the key operational episodes is drawing to a close. The Russian Ministry of Defense officially confirmed a substantial improvement of West grouping positions in the Kovsharivka area. Combined with previously arriving data on the capture of Kovsharivka, this means the battle for the northern bank of the Oskil River is essentially over. In parallel, Ukrainian sources published footage of a series of drone strikes against buildings in the northwestern part of Kupiansk itself. The character of the strike admits two explanations. Either Russian reconnaissance and sabotage groups have again filtered into this area, or a new offensive phase has begun with an attempt to expand the zone of control inside the city. Insufficient data exists for a definitive assessment. The operational summary for this direction: Under Ukrainian control north of the Oskil, only Novusinov, a small settlement south of Kovsharivka, apparently remains. Based on the current front-line configuration, by the end of April, this sector will in all probability be fully under Russian control. Lyman direction. The supply corridor narrows on the Lyman direction. The situation continues to develop along the logic established by yesterday's capture of Brusivka. Today brings footage documenting Russian strikes against bridges and crossings along the Siversky Donets, several kilometers north of Brusivka. This means that having consolidated at Brusivka, Russian forces immediately moved to expand control over this river section to fully cut off the remaining supply routes into Lyman. As of today, the Ukrainian side retains only a few narrow corridors for the transfer of reinforcements and supplies into the city, one of which passes through the Holuby-Ozera area. Russian forces are systematically working against each of these corridors. Active advance through Lyman's urban area continues. Operational assessment. Lyman is the highest priority for Russian command. The current front-line configuration indicates that the conclusion of the battle for Lyman is a matter of days, not weeks. Sloviansk and other directions. On the Sloviansk direction, Russian drone strikes against Ukrainian force positions in residential districts with Geran-type drones are being recorded. Russian forces continue active movement toward Ry-Oleksandrivka, Kriva Luka, the adjacent forest tract, and Mykolaiivka. On the Kostiantynivka and Dobropilya sectors, no changes. On the Zaporizhzhia direction, yesterday the Russian army conducted an offensive toward Orikhiv from the Robotyne and Novokharivka directions, deploying up to 10 armored vehicles and a significant infantry force on 2 axes. According to Ukrainian sources, the attack was repelled. The Russian side has not yet published official comment. Based on the character of the action, the Russian army appears to be seeking to reinforce the front line south of Orikhiv, with personnel and equipment ahead of more large-scale offensive operations. The Middle East, the war for oil prices. The key operational framework for understanding events on the Middle Eastern theater at this point is the following. This is not simply an armed conflict, it is a war for oil prices. The coalition is doing everything possible to hold or reduce the price of oil. The Iranian axis is doing everything possible to drive it higher. At the point where WTI reaches $110 per barrel, the consequences for the global economy become unpredictable. At the close of trading on March 27th, WTI stood at $96.64 and Brent at $110.41. Markets will open Monday under conditions where the following occurred over the weekend. Yemen officially entered the war on Iran's side, with immediate ballistic missile strikes toward Israel. Threats to blockade the Red Sea Strait were issued. Strikes hit the UAE, Bahrain, Qatar, and Kuwait, and the geography of Iranian strikes expanded to industrial facilities unrelated to oil refining. Yemen's Houthis appear to be holding their most impactful actions until market open to maximize the price effect. Geographic expansion of strikes. Industrial infrastructure. The Iranian campaign this weekend reached a new level, covering categories of targets not previously engaged. Emirates Global Aluminium in Abu Dhabi sustained significant damage from missile and drone strikes. In Bahrain, the aluminium plant was destroyed in strikes. Ras Laffan, Qatar's industrial city housing the world's largest liquefied natural gas production capacity, was struck, with footage of consequences published. In Kuwait, the fuel storage fire at the international airport continues burning. It has not been extinguished. The coalition, in turn, continues strikes against Bushehr and Tehran. Today, a pharmaceutical plant in the southern part of Israel was struck, apparently an Iranian or Houthi retaliatory strike. Israeli media are publishing extensive footage from the scene. Tomorrow, in addition to oil and aluminium, pharmaceutical market prices will register a reaction. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu announced further expansion of the buffer zone in southern Lebanon. Initial map corrections are already appearing. Israeli forces are wedging into isolated sectors, pushing Iranian-aligned formations back from the border. American deployment. 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit in the Arabian Sea. The 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, comprising 3,500 personnel, has arrived in the Arabian Sea area. The group includes the amphibious assault ship USS Tripoli, transport vessels, strike aviation, and amphibious tactical assets. According to available data, the American side is considering expanding the grouping to 17,000 personnel. In the Wall Street Journal's assessment, 17,000 is insufficient for a full-scale invasion, but sufficient for establishing control over key facilities. Karg Island, Keshem Island, and possibly Chabahar and the Chabahar Gulf on the far southeastern coast of Iran, an area with strategically convenient airport infrastructure. Consolidated assessment. March 29th confirmed the conflict is entering a phase of maximum intensity on both theaters simultaneously. On the Ukrainian theater, the record strike of 443 drones establishes a new quantitative threshold for the Russian strike campaign. In parallel, on the Kupiansk direction, the final episode of the battle for the northern Oskil bank is concluding, while Lyman is moving rapidly toward its denouement. The mounting destruction of Ukraine's locomotive fleet is forming a logistics crisis that will manifest fully during the coming summer campaign. On the Middle Eastern theater, Yemen's entry into the war and the first strike against UAE territory mark a qualitative threshold of escalation. Two strategic straits are simultaneously blocked. Persian Gulf industrial infrastructure has been struck across an expanded target list. The American amphibious contingent is in theater. Monday will be the day of the financial verdict. Briefing compiled as of the evening of March 29, 2026. A number of data points regarding the Kupiansk direction, the UAE strike, and the Houthi situation require verification as additional materials become available.